All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming to the third Thursday webinar. Today, I wanted to talk about Heritage Partnership Grants. The next deadline for the next round is coming up in January 2024 on the 26th. You know, the fall is fairly busy for grants. A lot of people who've applied for large grants are waiting for the HREC meeting in early November to find out if they're successful. The October small grants just came in, and this is a good time also to start thinking about if you want to do a partnership grant. And so I'm just going to talk about generally what's involved with them and what to think about when you're applying. So shorten the Heritage Partnership Program is HPP. Really, only if you talk to me outside of certain situations will you hear that term. But anyway, I might have written HPP several times in this, so that's what it is. Just so the point here is there have to be 2 or more Minnesota organizations that want to advance Minnesota history in some way. And so that's one important part, is that there are 2 eligible organizations that want to do a partnership. Now, they may already have an existing partnership, whether a casual one where they work together sometimes, or it could be something that Rethos could be one of those organizations. You just have to find somebody else that you'd want to partner with to do something. So I'm hoping later on that you might talk about what you're interested in, if there's anything in particular you were thinking of doing. So so we're just basically going to talk about how to propose a partnership program, how to think about what your final product is going to be, because what we expect from a partnership is a little different than what we would expect from a legacy grant. And just try to talk a little bit about what the experience of partnerships are, because again, those are a little different than some legacy grants. So again, the deadline's on January 26th, coming up. And again, fall going into winter is a good time to try to pull one of these together, if you've been thinking about doing it for some time, or if it just occurred to you. But the main thing you need to know, sometimes before you even approach the other organization, or possibly it's something that you've been talking about with other organizations already, is like, what is this thing, what this problem or opportunity that seems like it's there, it's hanging around, and it affects more than just your organization. It's something that a lot of people might benefit from if it was researched and played out, and some sort of product was developed to address whatever this problem or opportunity is. And so I think a lot of organizations know about those things, or it's like there's just stuff that comes up a lot, like, some of the outstate smaller historical organizations, they have collections that need a lot of attention, and often they get a lot of donations, and they don't have the staff really to process those donations. But because of the way they get funding and the way that they interact with their communities, it's hard for them to say no to things. And so a couple of small organizations in a county, for example, or just in a town, might say to themselves, what are we going to do about this? And so they might work on something as simple as, how do we come up with like a joint collection policy that's really designed for the kind of donations that we're getting. And so, you know, if it might be a couple of organizations like that, they might reach out and see if others are interested in doing this sort of thing. And then they just they might, before they even apply, brainstorm, what is it they want to do about this situation they find themselves in. And then it's a good thing to know too, is like, what's the result of this? What is the product that's going to help to address the problem? It's rare that you can solve these broader ongoing problems, but maybe you might somebody might come up with something that would be really effective. So all the requests have to be for more than $10,000. There's generally $400,000 available for all the applications. And again, so the four, let me jump forward here for a sec. Yeah, okay. Again, yeah, to start talking about how the final products are different, how what your result of the partnership is going to be. This partnership program allows for some creativity, different than some of the legacy grants. I mean, the legacy grants, obviously, if you're doing an exhibit or if you're doing any number of things where you have to actually create the product, obviously there's creativity involved in that. And any report, whatever that's being written, I mean, there's some analytical creativity often, but what I mean with the partnerships is that especially if it's a problem or opportunity that you don't really see a solution to already, the creativity might come in when you come up with something that you'd like to try. Like it should be within the realm of the field of history, so it's not that creative, but it's like you're trying to think of something original anyway, something maybe that you've seen used elsewhere but you've never seen used here, and you want to figure out if it's going to work. And so sometimes a lot of the programs that come through HPP are either just developing the partnership in the first place and people figuring out how is it going to work formally. Does it, do there need to be documents, generated that are going to help people understand what they're doing? The other type of thing is doing some sort of pilot project. So trying something out and seeing if it's going to work. And I'll keep talking about that as I go forward. And so, yeah, just some very basic things people do is, hiring temporary staff to deal with, say, the historical organizations in a county. They're trying to deal with their donation problem, donation opportunity, you might look at it. They want to get someone who can, look at, say there's 3 organizations going in on this. You hire somebody who knows how to assess collections and write collections policies, and they might be looking at, all 3 organizations and trying to come up with something that's going to work for all 3, and hopefully will address this problem of, how do you keep your smaller town donors happy, but yet get control over the types and amount of donations that you're getting. Improving treatment of similar historical resources. An example of that a program that just finished up is a couple of Northwestern organizations, historical county societies. They got all of their taxidermy treated to find out what kind of toxins were in the taxidermy, and that was a fairly large task actually. And getting the samples wasn't that hard, but paying for the testing and getting the reports is something that took quite some time. And it doesn't even, the results of that are those reports. So they know what they have in their collections. They know maybe what they should be doing about it. And so it's not even getting into actually treating the objects yet. So something like that could work really well for a partnership. Streamlining services. It could be that organizations want to figure out, like, how can they plan joint exhibits? How can they come up with those ideas, plan them, get the research done, get the fabrication done, and so forth? How can they do that more efficiently or work together? Maybe have traveling exhibits, things like that. That's been done. And then partnering to manage some of the resources for greater efficiency. Again, it's, there have been, curators hired for a year that, help to do some, basic cataloging work at multiple sites. Again, so the 4 categories that the partnerships have are partnership development and planning. And that is just, it can be, funding, a series of meetings where the partners figure out what it is they want to partner on, how they're going to, do whatever it is they want to do. And that often involves, hiring a consultant who can help to guide them, or, be a person that takes whatever they're saying and helps to develop something with them. Again, shared workforce, shared resources, shared services. There's 3 categories that are slight. Their differences are basically the perspective that you're coming at whatever it is you're trying to do. So a shared workforce, you're basically trying to perhaps hire somebody temporary, and they might work at all the partner sites. Shared resources is trying to, there's something that everybody needs to accomplish whatever they're trying to do with the partnership. And so there's trying to find and establish something that all the partners can use. And shared services is often like trying to streamline things that everybody does in such a way so that they're helping each other get these things done. And again, it almost all of the partnership grants that people get, we're hoping that there's some degree of partnership planning involved. In some cases, organizations have been working together for quite some time, so there's not a lot of that needed, but we like to see it addressed. And some parts of the process that most people might be familiar with, but just to run through it, you'll have to create an account, because if you're going to, submit an application, writing the application is done online. You need the account to be able to get in and start that process. Writing the application may or may not be the main task. A lot of us would say that, planning out what it is you're trying to do is actually the main task. And a lot of that has to happen before you get too far into your writing. Submitting by the deadline, obviously, very important. We announced the award in will be April of 2024. People will hear if their grants are successful. And then you get a year to do the work. It's going to be June 1st, 2024 through June 1st, 2025. And then writing the reports, delivering the products, you always, with any grant, you'll always get a month after after your end date to write your final report and to deliver those final products to us. And so let's see. So yeah, how to propose a partnership program. Uh, Again, it's some of the stuff that I covered already, but you any of the potential partners can start talking to uh, you know, history services, the grants office at any point, and just say, it's like, we've heard about this program, we want to know more about it, or we have an idea, we just want to know if that might work. I get a lot of questions like that, and as long as something is within the field of history and it isn't, clearly and obviously covered by one of the categories in the legacy grant program, then we'll certainly entertain, that idea and always be happy to talk to you about it. So yeah, we have been trying to open the program up to things like reuse studies. Partnership grants don't pay for construction work for sure, or even the early parts of construction work, like writing or like drawing up, drawings and so forth. Um, but we feel like there are earlier parts of it, like doing a reuse study, that is something that might work in partnership. And yeah, at some point, once you decide what you're going to do, then you need to figure out if there's somebody out there who can help you do that thing. And there usually is, but that's also something that we're happy to make suggestions about. A couple of other things to think about as you're doing the application, or just even planning what you're going to put in the application, is think about how will all the partners contribute, how they participate. It's partnerships don't work so well when like one organization basically wants to provide a service for all the partners, and the partners don't really have to do much. So that, that's something to think about. And basically, how will other partners benefit from the grant work? So again, the flip side of that, if one partner is providing all the services, it's like, well, what are they getting out of it besides, work? And again, if you have a good idea about what it is you want to do, you're talking to consultants and finding out what they would charge and what they could do for you in 1 year. Those are really important things to figure out. And finding that budget and some sort of realistic work plan for that year is an important thing to do. Again, so that the January 26th date is that's a pre-application, and so it's okay if the budget is just a ballpark budget, and if the work plan might need to be revised a little bit, might be a little less detailed than it would be in the final draft of the application. And of course, yeah, if it all works out, you've got 3 weeks in January to write the application and maybe ask one of us to look at it and give you advice before you even submit. Again, planning is so much of the work before you even get to the application. So the different fields that are in the application can sort of be boiled, at least I tried to boil them down to these simpler questions. So like the brief program summary is like the equivalent of the project description in a legacy grant application. Just what are the partners doing? What do they hope to accomplish? What are they going to do for a year? Partnership program description, how will the partners do it? So what's the, what are the steps? to make it actually happen, not just big pictures, what we want to do, but like, what are the things that are concretely going to happen? Program justification, it's like, why do you even want to do this? And what's it going to accomplish? Things like that. We love to hear, we need to hear that. Work plan timetable, like, if you figured out what the work is, and obviously an important thing that I did not list here is the budget, because it seems so obvious to me. But obviously when you're planning out your program and you're thinking about what you're going to do, obviously you're going to be filling out a budget to pay for those expenses. And so anything that is a line item in a budget is something you want to address in the program description, and then you want to plug it into your work plan and timetable. If you're hiring a consultant, you're going to be doing a lot of meetings. You want to put those meetings into the timetable. When do you think they're going to happen, and so forth. Who's going to do the work is the project personnel. We prefer it if you would at least emphasize the people who are going to be hired to do the work. But it's certainly interesting and useful to hear, who is doing sort of any kind of in-kind work or any kind of management of the overall situation. That can also go in project personnel. Enduring value, you're going to talk a little bit about what the result is going to be of the program. And important thing to throw into enduring value is, where will the result, the product, be publicly available? Someplace that is, a repository that would be appropriate to whatever the product is, but a place that would have public hours and access. And then sustainability is just, how will it continue? Not everything is destined to continue, and that's okay. But like, if there are reasons to just revisit what has been found out by the program, just talk about, like, who might do that, how it might be funded, things like that. And it's fine to say, like, we would like to do another phase of that's grant funded. I mean, it's perfectly fair to mention that. And the impacts and indicators sometimes are a little hard to fill out, but we just want to know, how do you know the work was done? So your impact is going to be, what was the result supposed to be of this partnership program? And then your indicator is going to be like, how do you check that the work was actually done and that it meets the standards, that the field expects, but that you were hoping for, you and the partners are hoping to get. And so a lot of times indicators are things like, the executive director of all the partners, sit down and, look at, or on their own time, look over what the product is and make sure that it's everything's there that needs to be. Since these programs are a little more flexible than some of the results of the legacy grant categories, articulating what your product is going to be can be somewhat challenging. And it can seem a little easier as you're writing it to say, whatever it is that you want to produce, just to sort of say, this is what it's going to be. But the thing to remember is that whatever you tell us, if you get the grant, then we're going to expect to see that at the end. And, so it's a good thing to think through, is like, what is the final product going to be, and how can we be sure that we can achieve that? Like that's something that's realistic to do in 12 months, especially when the first month might be, just devoted to trying to, get somebody hired to do the work in the first place. And then, so yeah, as you explain it to us in the application, just, just like be clear, and possibly the idea is to, be a little more modest in your goal, even if it's something that, costs $100,000 to produce. Just make sure it's something that's doable in a year. And, sort of the onus is on the partners to articulate and be more specific about what you're doing, the more creative your solution might be. And again, so yeah, so to talk about those possible products some more, if you're doing partnership development and planning, you might be producing planning documents of some sort that all of the partners need to think about how they're going to go forward with whatever it is they're doing. Shared workforce, sometimes it might be getting samples of the work that whomever did, like whatever the shared work was, getting examples, documentation of that work from all the sites so that that can be presented to show that this was the thing we're going to do, this is what was done. And then yeah, I mean, so this for shared resources is just an example that there might be cooperative agreements that are generated, and these procedures to manage whatever the resource was. And sometimes it's easiest, you have examples of that work that's been done, but what might be really useful is some sort of guide to show how that work was done, what there was trying to be achieved, how it was done, what the result was. And that works even if, in those situations where people try to pilot something and, it's a noble effort, but in the end, they're not quite able to achieve what they wanted to achieve. And they might find out, boy, this thing we were trying to do is, this wasn't the right solution for it. But if you document that, then you can still, you can learn from it and possibly be able to show other people what the right way might be. Yeah. So, and then shared services again. If there's something that everybody is working up together to provide to patrons and so forth, recording it and showing what the result was is one way to make a product out of it. So just to talk about some of the products that have come in the last few years, so one is an interpretive plan. The West Central Minnesota Historical Association hired people and helped to produce a large amount of research on the 1980s farm crisis in their area. And, the consultant and writer they worked with, came up with an interpretive plan to both sort of present what the findings were and then to make some sort of concrete suggestions for what next steps might be if any of the partners wanted to keep going and, produce exhibits. I think that's one thing they're interested in doing, but there's a number of things like films, books, and so forth that that were laid out as like clear possibilities for trying to interpret this material. MALM, the Alliance of Local History Museums here, came up with the Regional History Group Toolkit, which just has a lot of good advice about how regional history groups can form and operate. And I think they've gotten a lot of use out of that already. The Wayzata Historical Society and other um, groups around Lake Minnetonka. I think there were at least 7 groups to begin with. A few of them dropped out as the process continued, but they were looking at how realistic was it for them to merge and become one historical society so that they didn't have to compete for volunteers, for donors, and how could they consolidate storage of collections, and how could they help each other with interpreting and exhibiting history of the area. And in the end, it took quite some time, but they made use of this study and plan to go ahead and merge several of them into the Lake Minnetonka Historical Society. And I believe they just, I mean, really, they really just officially started as that group. And in Scott County, they did a visitor experience plan for the Riverfront Cultural Trail, which I'm not visiting myself, but it's an interesting plan. And one reason it's interesting is that more sort of stakeholders are brought in to participate in producing this and having a say in the process and what the results might be. So yeah, here's a couple of sort of work plans that can kind of demonstrate how it, what can be expected over a year. So again, early on, just finding who is going to do the work, getting actually hired can actually take considerable time. There's always lots of meetings, I think, especially, if partners are trying to coordinate on something. Yeah. And, and often this one I was looking at, they produced, this report. And so there was a period of, looking at a draft, giving feedback on the draft, and then, approving it at the end. Another one, this is another mom project to do wet salvage trainings. And a lot of their early process wasn't just hiring somebody, but it was finding locations that were committed to doing, hosting and participating in these trainings. And so that a lot of that is happening right now, and then going into the rest of the fall and winter, they're going to make sure everybody is getting the materials, the resources that would allow them to continue doing wet salvage, and at least being able to teach others about it. And so there are challenges with partnerships, especially if there are a lot of different partner organizations involved. Just the mechanics of getting everyone together, finding those availabilities and making it happen is, from what I'm hearing, it can be quite challenging. So knowing that, I think, is half the battle, and maybe shooting for a smaller number of partners can be helpful. And I think, I would also say one thing that trips people up is just record keeping. It's it's a challenge with any grant project, but if you've got multiple partners, um, sharing records and, designating someone to, really keep track of things, which can be a little challenging to get in the first place. Getting an invoice sometimes takes time. So, again, it's just something to think about. Make sure that, you know, usually the lead partner is the one that might be collecting all the paperwork that, is tracking the work. Um, and something the lead partner needs to think about. A lot of the final report advice is just, you know, again, making sure those financials are clear, that the invoices are received and, filed somehow, even if it's just thrown into a box that somebody gets to near the end of the project. And again, like, it's always much easier to finish a project if the product is clear and has been delivered. So that's something to focus on throughout. And there's sort of a minimum product of anything, even partnership planning is just a report on the process and results and findings of whatever it is that was done. And then here's the schedule. Again, January 26th for that pre-app deadline. The final app deadline's in middle of March 2024. The notification letters will go out. I think I said April earlier, but they'll be going out in May of 2024 to let people know if they got the grant or not. And again, start date is almost always June 1st, be 2024 this time, and end date will be June 1st, 2025. And the final reports will be due June 30th, 2025. And here's some more links. If if you have more questions, if you haven't seen these already, here they are. And yeah, Viva, do you happen to have any questions, or would you like to talk a little bit about what you're thinking about with the partnership project?
Thanks, John. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I think you've done a good job of laying everything out and providing all the things to consider, as well as kind of the baseline needs for applying, how to apply. In terms of what I think Rethos is thinking, there's maybe a few different areas, and I think I like that it's the partnership program, because there's some possibilities, a few different ways. We are in kind of the past the first stage of working on our archives project, whereby which we've got 40 years of the Rethos, slash Preservation Alliance of Minnesota archives and all the work that's been happening since 1981 and the formation of the alliance, now Rethos. So, looking at possibly partnering with other agencies to continue along on the process of our archives is one thing. And there's certainly folks locally who we can partner with on that. And another one, which I don't fully have a grasp on because I don't have a historic preservation background, but is potentially looking at, I guess, different sites or cities, and specifically maybe properties or buildings that have relations with historical societies, like different cities' historical societies, and maybe just sort of working together with different historical societies on the buildings or the properties and performing assessments and that kind of thing. So that one is not as fleshed out, but seems that we might possibly have those two kind of ideas kind of in process.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and so the second one, like it has, like a partnership program might be helpful in the sense of like if it's, if it's not exactly clear what it is that,
Mhm.
that you need to do, then it could be as simple a matter as, finding a couple of these locations that, are interested in what you're saying, and then, having a partnership development phase where you figure out, yeah, just exactly what it is the partners want, what Rethos wants to be
Right.
involved with. So it's like I mean, you have to have it sorted out to some degree, but I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
but 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 there is that flexibility to allow, just researching it, feeling it out, and seeing if what everyone wants to do is going to work. So,
Absolutely. Well, in full transparency, I am the grant writer.
uh-huh.
So I've worked with our direct program staff on ideas, and so I'm kind of going to be the one crafting the messages and working on the proposals and applications. So I'm possibly paraphrasing and maybe not saying the right words that kind of the ideas that have been kind of roughed out to me
Yeah,
already, but those are the two ones that I'm aware of that seem like they have good potential. And I do believe some of these partnerships are not going to be brand new or we're knocking on their door for the first time. Some of them may even be with people who we have previously partnered with or who we certainly know because we travel in the same groups, so to speak. So I hopefully, at least from my knowledge, we won't be starting from scratch. And so
yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, Rethos has been such a consistent participant in a lot of, you know, preservation and, education projects. So it's great to hear that, that you're looking at grants again.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
John, you had mentioned, and I want this to make sure and clarify this. We are certainly partners with MNHS on legacy grants and just other areas. And you did say specifically there should not be any overlap with other legacy grants or projects, right? For specifically the partnership program, like it shouldn't be like we're using it and we're doing the same thing already out of the legacy grant or whatever it might be, right? It should be something different.
It should be something different.
Okay.
That's true with all the grants that the grants office makes.
Right.
But I know, yeah, Rethos has those sort of internal partnerships with the historical society,
Yeah.
which is great. But if it's something, I mean, it could even be something that's an offshoot of something that you're already doing that internal partnership
Right.
work. But yeah, it's easiest if it's something that's it's a completely separate special project. That's
Yeah.
helpful.
Well, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. And the two that I've kind of roughed out or just mentioned now definitely would be things that are different from Main Street and education. It would just be these kind of special um, projects that are, going to be kind of specifically in partnership with other agencies that, hopefully will have these, mutually beneficial aims involved. And yeah, everything you had mentioned lines up with my understanding of HPP and, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's great to hear about this stuff. And yeah, whenever you have maybe more questions, get in touch. I know you might, at least Rethos is dealing with Ryan and John fairly regularly. So anyway, so that contact's there too. But yeah, I love to answer questions on this when the time comes.
Well, and thank you. I definitely will be knocking on your door if I have more follow-up or more questions, especially as I touch base with my colleagues here, just on the fine tuning, and also as we, go further along in, working with other with partners and finding out what we want and if there are more questions. I'm glad we're doing this in October, and and not, the first and second week in January. And I appreciate you guys being able to put this webinar out so we can tune in and kind of find out a little bit more about it. And I do feel that, the things that we're looking at are going to be right in step with what you presented. So
great. Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah. Well, so hope to talk to you soon. And, unless Ryan and John have questions, I think we'll go ahead and wind up this webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, John.
Bye, Ryan.
thanks, John.
See you, Viva.
Bye.